council meeting to order. And Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard.
Here.
Councilmember Husnick. On the phone with Dan. Councilmember Munson. Councilmember Byström.
Here.
Mayor Bain.
Here. I invite everybody to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to stop your video, you may do so in the bottom left of your Zoom tray. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council, we have an agenda before us this evening. I will note that the agenda notes on item 8, which is our placeholder for discussion items. However, we have no planned items for discussion this evening, just for clarification. With that clarification, I will entertain a motion to approve.
I'll motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard.
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick. Councilmember Byström.
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Agenda is approved. Next item on our agenda this evening is open forum. Karen, do we have any entries for open forum this evening?
We do not.
And I'm not seeing anybody in audience either. We don't have anybody sitting in queue, do we, Karen?
Let me double check. I don't think so, but no.
Okay. We'll move on to our consent agenda this evening. We have on the consent agenda items A through L. I will entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda items 6A through L.
I would actually like to, I'm sorry, Councilmember Byström, I should have jumped in. I would like us to pull consent agenda item 6H, which is the Castlewood Golf Course approval for building modifications. If you will entertain that modification.
Yes, I will amend my motion to approve consent agenda items 6A through G and I through L.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard.
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick. Councilmember Byström.
Aye.
And Mayor Bain.
Aye. Consent agenda items approved. Next on the agenda is item 6H, which is the Castlewood Golf Course approval of building modifications. Just wanted to have some discussion about this. I appreciate we are, excuse me, trying to move quickly and make good use of COVID available funds. But I also know that there's been some expressed concern over the design of the building and some questions on whether this is the quality of the building that we want for this location, being that it is essentially a pole barn with modifications. And I just wanted to have some discussion personally, I'm interested if this has been a conversation with Parks, Lakes and Trails, and if this is an approach that they are comfortable with. I fully appreciate that we're moving quickly under a very tight timeline. And so just wanted to have some discussion on where we are at, what design options need to be finalized this evening, and where there may be some additional opportunity for some design input, and just thought it was worth some discussion this evening. So Patrick, I know Jamie, you're also with us this evening.
Yeah, let me start. Yeah, you're absolutely right that the timeline is the critical feature here that we need to get started on, at least start construction before we have to finalize the CARES Act funding. The most efficient and fast way to do that was to buy a kit from Menards and modify it with windows and doors and things like that. Yes, it is a steel building, pole barn, if you will. I am sure we can look at modifications, whether we can put a different skin on it, more windows, more designs. Right now, it will be a two-tone design with, a different color in top and different bottom, possibly a garage door, but windows and doors. We're going to make it as nice as we can because we want it to look nice and B, last for 40 years. But we didn't have a lot of time to ask anybody about the design. Go to Parks and Lakes and Trails. I mean, we've talked to them about that we're going to build a building, but we've just been scrambling. The first part of this process was try to find somebody to build the darn thing, help us design it and build it, and that didn't work very well. So we went to the kit route where we can get a kit for a price and then pay somebody to assemble it and things like that. If the council wishes to have us look at a better design, we can certainly try to do that as much as we possibly can. And I just don't know what right now, and Dave, you can help with what the options are as far as whether we want to use hardy siding instead, whether you want it to look like a barn or a country home or what. But I mean, I know there's home plans out there too that you can buy from Menards that might look different. But so that's where we're at. I mean, it's really about timing, and we didn't have a lot of time to do this. We just had to kind of rush into it. And to be honest with you, the building out at Castle doesn't lend itself to distancing, doesn't lend itself to maybe more than one person in the place. Plus, it's not in our property, and we're paying $3,000 a year rent for it, for a shack that's about the size of, not even size of a mobile home. So.
Understand. Councilmember Gerard, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, my main concern is not that it's a pole barn as such, and I'm fine with a steel roof. I just, with the steel siding, it definitely looks like a pole barn, and I know we frown upon pole barns in the commercial areas, and unless you have enough land, which I'm sure we have enough land on the golf course for this.
We do.
It just needs to, I would like to see it dressed up a little bit so it doesn't look quite as much as a pole barn. So this is probably less of my city council hat than my days in the planning commission coming out.
Understandable.
That is my biggest concern.
Well, I think we can work on that. I just don't, again, know what the options are. We'll have to take a closer look, and then what the cost of those kind of modifications may be.
Dave, go ahead. And I think you might be on mute. Or your
No, now you're on.
your earbuds aren't working. Sign language? Councilmember Byström.
Well, he's working on that.
Dave, you can also, hold on just one. Dave, you could also use the chat feature.
I was just so thrilled to see it. Okay.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I was a little bit indifferent until you kind of brought it up tonight. I mean, it's just a little thrilling to see a new option out there with a lot of possibilities and potential for gathering places and, that kind of thing. But I do tend to agree that, this is going to be a fairly permanent structure for that we hope will last for, quite a long time, as to the little tiny shack that's out there right now. So if there is anything we can do to dress it up, maybe add some opportunities for additional natural light coming in. I did know windows were a little on the small side, at least on the design that I looked at, and but I also understand golf ball placement and the need to have those strategically placed within the structure as well. I would say that would be one concern of mine with the steel siding is errant golf balls and lots of dents, and how might that look, with the current steel siding that's, scheduled to be placed on there. So hopefully I've bought Dave enough time here that, he now has the ability to to jump in and provide some feedback. So
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So, woohoo! All right. Good. So the building is getting built, or it would be assembled with wainscoting. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's just basically a two-tone. So, I mean, we can start off with that. I mean, that's our build price, which we can get in underneath, the money we're allowed it. We can always add a brick facade around it, or we can do stuff afterwards, better landscaping, all that. But it's kind of a unique building because not only a clubhouse, but they would like to do the simulator golf, and it requires 12-foot minimum high ceiling. So a pole barn is beautiful for that, because you can purchase a pole barn at 12 feet, at 14 feet, at 16 feet, which is quite helpful. Whereas like a normal building, a house, it would have to be custom made. So I think also we're getting a wide open area, so then we can design the inside, so we can put the bathrooms where we want, we can put the simulators where we want, we can kind of do that. I think gussying up the outside is always something we can do after the fact. If it looks great when we have it up and it looks good, then I think we can go with what we have. But I mean, it's always an option to, do some exterior work to it to tie it in. So I guess that's my 2 cents in that. But it's the uniqueness of the 12-foot ceilings is kind of one also thing. It's not that we went to get that pole barn, but it's rough to get a building that's spec'd out at 12 feet.
Yeah, I can appreciate all of that, and I think I would just add into the uniqueness here is the funding capability, the funding source, right, which is unique in timing as well as availability. So I would hate for us to turn this down for less than perfect. I think we're in the land of what can we do with the funds that are available, and if we all are in agreement that this is the best we can do with what's available, and there's opportunity for future improvement. It's clearly, in my opinion, a step up from what we have today, and also appreciate that our timeline is incredibly tight. Looks like we have Councilmember Husnick joining us.
So you're in the
Welcome, Councilmember Husnick. We are on the consent agenda item for the Castlewood building, which was pulled from the consent agenda for discussion. And so we are having discussion around the design aesthetic and some of the limitations we have around funding availability and timing. Essentially the conversation we're having right now. Any further, and so also just clarification on timeline, this has not been workshopped with Parks, Lakes, and Trails.
They have been made aware that we're putting a building up. We haven't got to them design again because of the very, very short window with this. We just had to take some shortcuts we usually don't recommend or do. We met with the Parks, Trails, was it 2 weeks ago? I think it was when I met with them, and we reviewed 3 items on the agenda which was the golf course was one of them. And they were informed that we were putting a new building up. We didn't show them the design. To be honest, we didn't have the design. That's again, I apologize if it seems rushed, but it is rushed, and not the way we like to do business, but the way we have to in this case.
Councilmember Gerard.
I'm all for this building. Don't get me wrong at all, and I'm going to vote for it tonight. But I would like to keep in mind that if it doesn't turn out as nice as we would really like it to be, that in the future, future councils or Dave's secret budget can manage to get up a little bit.
I probably, we will look for whatever we can to make the building acceptable. Again, the pictures probably in the packet didn't reflect what it might look like. They were a little bland, but we'll continue that, but see what we can do. We do have to order that shortly, so hopefully this week, but we will sit down and talk about it and look at any improvements that we can make before we go ahead with it.
That's all I ask.
That makes sense. With that, I would make a motion that we approve the Castlewood Golf Course building modifications as presented in our packet.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, Karen, could we have a vote, please?
I think
Councilmember Byström?
I just wanted to echo that I attended the same meeting as Administrator Casey did, and when the presentation was made, and the Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission seemed to understand the tight timeline and generally put their their faith in the city administration to be able to do a good job of this, making sure that it was aesthetically appealing and functional, and they didn't seem to be hesitant in that opinion. So
That's great. Thank you. Karen, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Motion approved. Our next agenda item this evening is item 7A, which is the CARES Act transfer to EDA. Patrick or Dan, who's taking the lead on this one?
Either, I'll start and Dan, you can jump in. This is basically, as you all know, we created a grant program for local businesses and possibly nonprofits to fund them for lost revenues and things like that, and had a grant program. We've received those applications. They are going to be distributed through the EDA as the authority. So all we'll need to do is transfer money from the general fund where it resides now, where the CARES Act money was put, to the EDA fund so that we can follow the proper procedure and have the EDA review and approve, and then we will issue all of the qualifying grants. Dan, you got something else?
Yeah, I can just give a quick update on where we are in terms of the grant process. So we did receive a total of 40 applications for the CARES Act grant. We got 31 for-profit applications and 9 nonprofit applications. I'm currently going through those applications and making sure that they have an impact, a revenue impact due to COVID-19, but also verifying expenses that they want to be reimbursed through the grant program. Right now, the budget that was set and the amount that's going to be transferred is $300,000, and we will spend all of that $300,000 through this grant program. We had asks that were well in excess of that. However, as I've been going through these applications, that number has been coming down a little bit, so we're closer, just a little bit north of 300 right now. I anticipate that we are going to be able to fund a couple of the nonprofits. I don't want to say a total amount at this point because it's a pretty big moving target still. I mean, obviously priority, the first bucket funding was the for-profits. But today, as I went through and started looking at what was conditionally approved, the number did dip below the 300,000. So I'm thinking some of that could go over to the nonprofits. But I don't want to say how many are going to be funded right now because it's still too early and I'm still waiting on some subsequent information from some of the applicants. But I'm thinking now for the first time that we will be able to touch a couple of those nonprofit applications. My goal is to have the underwriting hopefully completed by the end of this week and then get grant agreements out to those grant applications that were conditionally approved. They would then sign that grant application. Those will come back. And like Patrick said, those will all go to the EDA for final approval on the 26th, and the checks will be issued after that. So we are on track to get everything completed. I just, it's been a lot of work just making sure that all of the documentation is there, but I'm very pleased with the documentation I do have. I feel that we have a good set of documentation. So if we ever were to get audited by, the federal government on this, and we do have a good audit-proof set of records that we can present to them to show where these funds are being used. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the process or the application period today.
Dan, quick question for you. This is, or quick timing clarification. This is the only time council will see this from an approval process because we are transferring money to the EDA. EDA will make final approval at their next meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, this will transfer the funds to the EDA. The EDA will be the issuing body that issues the grants what I'll do is I'll take all of these applications back and then I'll give them all to the EDA for final approval on the 26th. And then from there, the checks will be issued from the EDA after they're approved at the meeting on the 26th.
Thank you for clarifying. Councilmember Byström.
Dan, are you able to do a report back on who received funding? This is really, really exciting, and I'm thrilled that we've had that this kind of response and that it's making that level of impact in the community. Obviously, it would have been wonderful to be able to fund everybody, but this is great news, and I would love a report back on who landed with funding.
Yeah, I'll do like a high level summary report of who got the funding and what the funding amounts were. I won't go into the details of what their financials are, but basically who got the funding and what the level was. That'll be presented to the EDA, but I can also forward that on to the council as well when that report is completed.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Councilmember Husnick.
All right, yeah, thank you. My concern always has been this thing being confidential as best as we possibly can. I mean, there's no reason for this to be out in the public. Maybe the names or something like that, but I want to make sure that it's held in confidentiality as best we can.
And that is exactly what I'm doing. I'm putting those financial documents that we're getting, or we're treating those as confidentially as we can, and making sure that what's getting reported out is high level summary information on grant awards.
Thanks, Dan.
And clarification along those lines, we will only see as part of that report approved, final funded. We won't see anybody who, for whatever reason, was either incomplete or ineligible. That list is not part of that report, correct, Dan?
Correct. You'll just see the final funded approved list on there. And to that effect, at this point, if anybody has any contact from a nonprofit, I am holding on contacting them at this point just to make sure. I want to make sure I expend all the money in the for-profit bucket before I start reaching out to the nonprofits. And what I've been trying to do with these is I don't want the applicants to submit all sorts of documentation if for some reason we're not going to get to the nonprofits. I didn't want them to go through the work ahead of time. So I know a few of them are pretty anxious to get, funding award levels and figure out where they are in the process. But at this point, I'm holding on that until I have a better picture of what the numbers are going to be, so I know which applicants will be funded from that on the nonprofit side.
That makes sense. Any other questions on this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Councilmember
Madam Mayor,
Husnick.
I'd make a motion that we approve resolution 10-12-20-04, the resolution approving the transfer of CARES Act funds to the EDA fund for payment of the COVID-19 emergency grant program grants.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? I would just add thank you to Dan for all of the work on the underwriting and keeping this moving under a tight timeline. Nice work.
Mm-hmm.
Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Motion approved. We are going to move into staff updates this evening, and we'll start with Patrick and then go to Dan.
Okay, just a few things. We've been meeting with the Senior Center to try to understand their operation and where we're going to go forward with that. Just to remind you all that we have a joint meeting with Parks, Trails and Recreation, or Parks, Trails and Lakes next week, which I'm sure this should be part of the discussion that we have. We have a great deal to talk about what we're going to do there. And also have a meeting with FLA this week to talk about field usage. So hopefully that will go well. I will cover the rest of my report in closed session.
Thank you, Patrick. Dan, and after Dan, Chief Peterson.
I have no updates unless you have questions for me.
Any questions for Dan this evening? Seeing none, Chief Peterson and then Ryan.
I have no updates for you tonight, but if you have any questions for me.
Anything for Chief Peterson this evening? Seeing none, Ryan and then Pete.
City Council, Ryan Goodman, City Engineer. I don't have anything specific to update tonight unless you have some questions with anything.
Any questions for Ryan? Ryan, I've had a couple of resident questions, and I know it's a little bit outside of our lane, but the questions come in nonetheless. On timing of the project on the 97 bridge, and specifically, I think it's the light that's on the right on the Forest Lake border. Do you have any updates on that timeline?
I have not. I actually reached out to MnDOT's, and I don't know how much. A lot of stuff's really been being hit hard in that area. So, I'll specifically ask that question. I was just looking for general updates along the Highway 97 project and received really nothing to report, they said, but I'll specifically ask about the signal and send out an email to staff once I hear from them.
That would be great. Thank you. Next, we'll go to Pete and then Jamie after Pete.
Your Honor, good evening. I don't have an update. Happy to answer questions.
Any questions for Pete this evening? All right, moving on to Jamie, and we'll do Dave after Jamie.
Good evening. I am working on the items Patrick discussed, which include working closely with the senior center, getting ready for a FLAW meeting this week, and also preparing for our joint workshop with City Council, which will be next Monday. So that's what I'm working on. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions for Jamie? Seeing none, Dave, and then we'll have Sandy after Dave.
Mayor's and council just leaves, and more leaves. So council site was pretty busy. We hauled out almost 35 loads today, and they were coming in as soon as we were getting out of there for the day. So that is keeping us busy. We have 2 street sweepers out as well. That's pretty much our main concern right now. And then we're filling in other tasks around that. So any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Any questions for Dave? Seeing none, Sandy.
I have nothing further to add. Nothing further to add unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Sandy? And then Karen.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have anything to add unless there's questions.
I have a broad question for everybody. I haven't seen any specific updates this afternoon. I know that legislature's back in session. Any indication of any movement on a bonding bill?
I have not seen any indication so far on that. They haven't adjourned as far as I know, so that's a good sign. We had some communication with Representative Detmer's office last week about the priorities that the city of Forest Lake has. And we sent a follow-up communication email to Senator Housley as well, just to reiterate that. So we're watching, we're looking at the league, we're looking at anybody we can find to see if there's a bill sitting out there. But the good news, as far as I know, they haven't adjourned the session yet, so.
That might be our only indication right now, is they're not adjourned, so there's still a chance.
Your Honor, on the news right before this meeting, the Speaker of the House was reporting that she believes she had enough minority support to move forward with the bonding bill.
Excellent.
Pete, do you know if they had a bill number by any chance?
They didn't report it, but I'm sure I can get that for you if you need.
Okay.
That would be fantastic, and actually, council members, a good opportunity for us all to reach out to our legislative contacts and make sure Forest Lake is top of mind for that. So Pete and Patrick, if you could forward on any information you have, that'd be helpful. Very good. Council updates. We'll start with Councilmember Husnick and then Councilmember Gerard.
Madam Mayor, I don't have anything to report tonight, so appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Gerard.
They have no update tonight unless someone asks questions.
And Councilmember Bystrom.
I just attended a senior center board meeting last week, and the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission. That's all I have.
Very good. And I don't have an update either this evening. And so with that, I believe somebody has language to move us into a closed session.
And I have it if no one else has it.
Please.
Okay. I move that we go into closed session pursuant to Minnesota statute section 13D.05, subchapter 3B for confidential discussions regarding the sale or lease of parcel number 29.03.21.11.0003.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Karen, before we vote on this, quick logistics. We are moving into another Zoom meeting with us that has a separate link. We will have closed session there, and then we will come back to this meeting to adjourn. Is that correct?
Correct.
And does everybody have the link for the closed session Zoom? Perfect. Karen, could we have a roll call for closed session, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson, Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye, and we are in closed session.